They are not online. Okay. Okay.
What was I saying?
At the end of this conference, if you know you contributed to this panel, send us your full paper. There is a discussion going on with a good journal. Prof is aware of it too. They've already started the conversation. So we will select this particular is not ending. This particular panel is not ending now. The conversation will be ongoing. So even those we did accept their panel, we still have like a workshop or another conference where we will keep on the conversation. And then there is a people that is already interested in this particular. So when you go home, please write your paper well. It's an interest journal. I don't want to mention the name of the journal results. So when we are going to select papers, then we will have a discussion. If we get more quality papers, we may click for issue 1 and issue 2, special issue. So I want you to go home and work on it. I've had a conversation with Prof this afternoon on it. So we are going, an editor is already interested and it's not a necessity. So let's keep on, please, let's keep the, so let's, after at the end of this thing, we will request for it. You have my email, and then we'll find a way of sending out for calls to bring in the papers. So I think it's already time, let's talk. We are keeping the conversation on Japa for those that want to Japa and those that want to stay. So we have, for now, I'm Ngozika, still your Ngozika. And then Matthias is here. Odinaka is also online. These are the 3 musketeers conducting this panel. So we are going to the first person. I don't know whether, okay, Samson is here already. Samson Uchenna is here.
Mark is here.
Mark is here too.
Yes.
Mark is here. So we will listen to Samson. Samson is from University of Nigeria. His paper is from Lagos to London. Popular music and the Japa Zegi. Samson, Oya, over to you. Zegis, explain Zegis. I'm learning too.
Okay, thank you. It's a kind of a zeitgeist is a mood of a certain time in history, you know. So popular music from Lagos to London, popular music and the Japa zeitgeist. So let me share my screen and talk to Ray.
Please, Samson, you have 12 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Yeah, in 2018, Mr. Easy released this album, Lagos to London. It was very popular in Nigeria, very popular in Ghana, all over the United States. And back then I was in Nigeria. I'm writing about how it inspired me to pursue my Japa that brought me to North America today, and how Nigerian popular music, what we now call Afrobeat, inspires young Nigerians across Africa and across the world in this movement. So Lagos to London is a title, and Mr. Easy released this album that I got the title from. So this extract that album, Molo London. He created this like it is time to move to London, and if you're not ready, you won't join the bus. I was like, oh, so is there a bus now moving people to London? And let's take a listen here what he did in that skit with Brother Shaggy. So that's it. When I listened to this, I said, oh, I intensified my applications into North American universities, because I'm a musician. I teach music at the UNN, and I intensify, and I got it. So one of my stories in the paper, and
Samson, we didn't hear the music.
looking at the,
Okay,
you didn't hear it?
Yes.
Oh, maybe it's from Northwood, but it played here. It played over here. So let's move ahead, please, because
Okay.
time. Yeah. So looking at the video, Mr. Easy actually showed people that he's moving to London with a downfall in Lagos and his luggage on top of the bus, trying to create, that message of movement. And in an interview with a journalist, he said migration is something that just, is fun for him. He's seen his dad travel, his uncle, travel, just the concept he liked moving around. It's just not something serious. So theme of migration in Nigerian popular music continues to flow because Nigeria, there's this belief that it is better elsewhere. No one is singing about, I will take you to Kano, I will take you to Budu Ranch. No one is singing about that. They're singing about elsewhere, like outside Nigeria. You hear it in Davido's current album, Timeless, singing and mentioning things like Dubai, and it continues. So the issue of power failure in Nigeria, that the system has not been fixed, is also contributing to, music engaging with migration and all that. In 2016, we hear Timaya in this morning saying that he just flies to Dubai and to enjoy and charge his phone in America. So we also hear Tekno in 2016 releasing the song Rara, where he said each time he is outside Nigeria, he will be in a haste to come back to Nigeria. But when he is back, his phone will die and he will want to go back and charge his phone, outside of Nigeria. So these two, they were talking about the issue of electricity and the point that the system has not been fixed. So in 2018 also, Naira Marley, and this one I engaged undergraduates in a discussion in UNN. One of the young women told me that this song actually is inspiring her to pursue her dream of moving out of Nigeria. In this song, Naira Marley showed a scene where he was running away. He defined Japa at the beginning of the video as like running out of a difficult situation, flee, flee to London, flee to Canada, flee to Chicago. So it's one of the songs I looked at. So as they are singing about Japa motivating young Nigerians to move, they too are also engaged in that movement. Like today, we have these faces, LD, Niola, Techno, Young Six, Sam Clef, and the band, who is now in Dubai. They have moved and now visit Nigeria and continue to make their music, even though you can't say that the impact they were creating then, is the same. Like now they have a few of them, like Techno and the band, we continue to hear them back to back. Now, the Japa stuff continues to nurture in the minds of some musicians in Nigeria. Like we see in this tweet, Simi was complaining about police brutality, that making her feel so bad, and LD responded that that's one of the reasons why he left Nigeria. So now, can we say that the Japa in Nigerian music is all bad? No, because looking at Afrobeats documentary from episode 1 to 12, you will see that is a story of Nigerians and migration and music. So we can't be talking about Afrobeats today without Ayo Shonai and DJ Abbas moving to London, creating African diaspora contingent that consume Nigerian music in the UK, back to Ghana, to the United States. Today, Afrobeat is a globalized genre that everybody is talking about. So when we look at this, we can't say that Japa is all bad about Nigeria and he continued to make Nigeria this music, and now I've got more fame, and young Nigerians are making it big in the industry. So in my code, I say that these musicians promote the awareness of Nigeria's popular music heritage. And because as we see, Afrobeat is become bigger than Afrobeat and other high life and other preceding styles. So the flows of these musicians and the music and the people that consume it, contribute to innovation and the exchange of knowledge. And I say that, the Japa mood in Nigeria is the effect of decades of leadership failure, which Achebe complained about, that the problem of Nigeria, you take it down to leadership. So popular music, finally, I say it's just the audio manifestation of a social reality. Thank you.
Matthias, continue.
Yes.
Okay.
I think we can go ahead with the second presenter so that after we can ask questions generally.
Okay. The second presenter is Mark Omovie Ikeke,
Okay.
from Delta State
Thank you.
University. Mark,
Okay,
please, you can go on.
Thank you. My presentation is on eco-social approaches to this question of Japa out of the country. First and foremost, I think that it's fundamental to recognize that every human being has a kind of struggle for survival. That is a human instinct that is in all of us who want to survive. And beyond meeting our basic human needs also, we know today there is struggle for social status. Everybody wants to find meaning and purpose in life. So it's not just even enough to meet your basic needs of food, water, and shelter. You must also be able to meet your needs for psychological fulfillment, emotional fulfillment, and the rest. Then it's also important to note that, just as the previous presenter had said, migrating out of the country, there's no problem in it itself. It's possible to japa out of this country for a very good purpose. In my own experience, of course, I've traveled out of this country once. I went to study at Fordham University in New York. I was there for 2.5 years. But I decided to return even though there was pressure on me to stay because of my own religious commitment at home. If there were no religious commitment at home, I would have personally have stayed over there. But I felt committed to return to fulfill my religious commitment. So I argue that one of the fundamental, these are some of the fundamental reasons why especially many young people want to go out of the country. In terms of economics, unemployment, Nigeria is said to be the poverty capital of the world. There is insecurity. There is youth restiveness in the Niger Delta. And when you aggregate all these economic and social problems together, life has become insecure, brutish, and nasty, as the philosophers we put it. And because every human being has a drive for survival, for meaning in life, anything that threatens this instinct to survival, to a meaningful life, son, many young people to leave the country. And so if the economic conditions, that is why the eco-social approach is arguing that government has a responsibility, government and of course the entire country, to create the social environment, the economic environment that will enable people to be able to satisfy their economic needs, their social needs, their cultural needs, and many other needs. And when these ones are in place, a great deal of young people and many others will stay in the country, while of course there will be some who will live for genuine reason. So what we're actually critical about is no problem with people living for genuine reasons, but that If our country is well developed, there's socio-economic development, there are social infrastructure, it will help people to know that they can still find meaning and purpose and meet their needs here. Then there's also the factor of the environmental factors in our own nation. You know, Nigeria, like other parts of the world, is facing environmental problems. You talk of pollution. In the Niger Delta, you know what is taking place. You think of places in our country where there is mining activity, environmental impact, there is soil erosion. Think of what happened in our country not too long ago when there was so much water coming from the river Benue, coming from Cameroon because a dam was opened there. You know the environmental impact, a lot of displacement. People lost their lives. People lost their businesses. So things are safe. Somebody, for instance, who have experienced the environmental impact of, because he was just staying along the river Niger in his, or river Benue, in his own village and town. And even when it happened, what happened? The so-called palliative, many people did not see. If there were palliative, corruption took away many of the palliative. So because of all this put together, people want to check out of the country to where their lives will be secured. So the fundamental argument of my paper is that government has a duty, and that is where also the leadership issue comes in. As a duty, we need responsible governance. We need responsible leadership. We need good governance that should put social infrastructure in place. We should have an environment that is free from environmental pollution, degradation, and all the consequences that come with it. It will enable people to find fulfillment in our country and stay in it and help to build it. And even when people japa out of the country, out of necessity, they will always long to come back home, either occasionally or after a while to come back to resettle because they knew the environment for them to survive as human beings is present there in the country. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have James
Yes.
Onyebuchi.
Onyebuchi. Yes.
Okay,
James.
Onyebuchi James.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah,
Yes.
from
Yes, please.
Nanazikiwe University.
Yes. All right. Good afternoon or good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I am my paper is on Japa, the future of the vanishing youth and the crisis of nation building. You know, placing two of them together sounds very paradoxical, but that is the truth. Our youths are vanishing, and still we'll talk about the youths being the future. So to find out Nigeria seems to be an albatross on the neck of Nigerians. You see, now we are aware, the other speaker just talked about people when he was in New York and the decision whether to come back or not. I was in a similar situation too, so I understand why youths leave the country. I lived and studied in Germany, all right, and I was a chartered translator with the UN Agency for Drugs and Crime in Vienna. So I had a well-paid job, a good life going for me. But at some point, you know, because most of we live in a liminal space in diaspora because we are always trying to negotiate our belonging. At some point, you just want to start having this nostalgia, you know, the idea that there must be that the homeland ought to be home, and then you take a decision which is like a leap of faith by, according to Kierkegaard, and then you land into hot soup, you know, because you come in, you are so full of hope and vision, and then you see that you are in hell, and then at some point you begin to even regret why. As a matter of fact, when actually
I think the network just jack bad. The network just jack bad, and who is helping us? I think you should mute Dr. Onyebuchi or Professor Onyebuchi, and then let's listen to our last presenter. Okay, he's gone. He has even second at the joke. Okay. Thank you, ma. Thank you. All right. I'm Sekina. Mute here.
Sorry, please.
I let him go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is part of the problem. This is part of the problem why people want to leave Nigeria. You can see even internet connectivity is a problem. I can't even speak. I mean, I can't deliver my seminar without problems. Yes. So this is one of the problems. And so when the youth escape, some of them find, like the former speaker said, find genuine employment, and they have everything going well for them. And if you do not have dream beyond living a comfortable life, you can live your normal life anywhere in the West and feel very good with yourself. But the problem is when desires, when you want to deport them, they will say they are not coming back. They don't want to come back. So you see, obviously Nigeria is pure hell. Now it goes back to leadership. Now we have leaders who do not even understand what government is all about. You know, people think that government is just getting into public spaces, sharing funds, stealing them, and keeping all the rest for generations yet unborn. They do not know that government is there to make the lives of people better. Now, you see what we are arguing here. We talk about subsidy removal, fuel subsidy removal. Of course, they are talking about educational subsidy removal. And of course, you're going to see the power subsidy removal. All the subsidies removed. Now, the average Nigerian is left on his own, to be battered around by pure capitalist forces that he can't even control. So this space is killing for many people. And if they have to escape it, well and good. Because even telling our leaders to get it right. Become a cliche, from one government to the other. Buhari's regime was the worst I have witnessed in my lifetime. Now we have gotten into a new regime, and they hit the ground running on day one. And hitting the ground running on day one was removing fuel subsidy completely. And so it falls back also on the average Nigerian. Their suffering increases. And now they talk about educational loan for students. Of course, we know the implications there. Even many people are not going to be qualified to get that loan. And when you get it after service, 2 years after service, if you don't repay it, you go into jail. What I mean, I don't understand. And I've been arguing back and forth with some of my colleagues, some of them supporting the government and some not supporting. I have lived in a country where my bachelor's, master's, PhD studied. I earn in 2 months, I earn what some people cannot earn in 10 years, in just 2 or 3 months. Okay? So the idea that I'm ready to pay for education, then you have no need even desiring to go to education. Who said that? Most of the Western countries, except for maybe US, even US has some welfare system, or Canada or UK. All European countries, all of them, in one way or the other, have welfare systems that ensure that people don't go down into abject poverty. If you don't have accommodation, there's a provision for social housing. And if you don't have a job, you get some token every month so that you don't fall below existence minimum, according to how they call it. But here, I mean, the average Nigerian is left on his own. Now he has to struggle. Many people, of course, now fuel a liter of fuel is about 500 and something naira, sometimes 600. How is that going to be possible for people to survive? And then people are thinking that it's normal. It's normal. We have to remove it. If we don't remove subsidy, how are we gonna finance the government? I mean, if you do not know how to finance your government, why get in there in the first place? Why is it that all the time it is every Nigerian that has to suffer in Nigeria for Nigeria to get better? I don't get it. So the purpose of this paper, like I said, number one, is to understand why Nigeria is an albatross, and we have to look inward. Look inward. I mean, examine every nook and crannies of our institutions, why we are where we are. In all the ministries, what they do there is share money, overhead capital, they share it among themselves. You see workers in ministries owning houses up and down. And then you see these lecturers their salaries for 8 months, and said that they were not working. I mean, how can you say that? How can you say that it's teaching only the work they do? So we need to understand why Nigeria is not working. And sometimes we close our eyes to the fact that we know why it's not working, and then we pretend that somehow God is going to help us and make it work. Nigeria can never work if people are not willing to make sacrifices as leaders. If you are the president, you need to understand that the reason for being there is to make the average Nigerian life better. The essence of government is to make life better for people. And nothing else. You make life better for people. That's what government is all about. If you financing roads, of course, you tax people. Yeah, but of course, whatever you get from the taxing, you spread it so that those who do not have somehow also exist. But there must be a way that people get cushion from the effects of social democracy in every government. So the idea that you will leave the people to battle with market forces is primitive market economy. I mean, where does that happen? Where even in the US, that's a capitalist state, you will still see some elements of welfare there. So how can you remove education subsidy? You remove petroleum subsidy. You remove power subsidy, and then you say you are running a government, you want to make people's life better. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me. So I have to stop here. If I keep talking, I keep getting emotional about these things. We have to find out why Nigeria is not working. It's like an albatross on the neck of people, and people are just dying. Yes, please. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. I'm driving. I had to stop to join this just to get some kind of catharsis, because I'm getting crazy about all these sort of things happening in Nigeria. People get given the impression that government is for people. Government is to make the lives of people better. It is just simply to make the lives of people better. There is no other reason why there is government. Please, anybody who these areas should make them understand that the essence of government is to make the lives of citizens better. No, there is not.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Don't get emotional. Don't get emotional about Nigeria. Don't get emotional. You should embrace this with faith. I'm looking forward to see your paper, Onyebuchi. Thank you, but don't get emotional.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I'm Sekinat Adejoke Kola Aderoji. The title of my paper is Japa Syndrome and the Notion of Second Slavery in the Post-COVID Era, Effect on Development in Nigeria. I have my abstracts. I have the introduction full, sorry. I have the abstract full. I have the conclusion full, but I'm going to speak to the remaining parts of the paper. Okay. Migration is considered as an age-long phenomenon. In fact, it's as old as man. It is a movement that's intended for survival and sustainability. This paper seeks to address the mass movement of the Nigerian youth to other continents and other countries of the world. The movement became incessant, especially after the events of COVID-19 pandemic. Actually, Nigerians have been moving before. And the first time, before the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic, the movement was not so incessant, and the number of people moving was not really high until after the events of COVID-19. So here comes, to the dismay of the researcher, the number of Nigerian youths moving out continued to swell up even after the pandemic era. But the fact that during the pandemic era, we have learned a lot of lessons. For instance, when ports, harbors, the airports, seaports, and all others were closed down, and we all had to look inward to survive. So within the period, we have learned a lot of lessons that there are opportunities, especially in the digital space, for employment upon acquisition of skills. But after the event of COVID-19, we started moving out again en masse. This is the cross of this research. So I tried to look at, the researcher is interested in storing a group of data to bring out the degree of migration of people before and after the event of COVID-19 pandemic, and the essence of migration and the notion of second slavery. So I also consider the effect of such movements on political, social, economic development of Nigeria. The emphasis was on economic development, but the major fact is that all these factors are interwoven. Anything that affects positively the economic development would definitely affect all other aspects of development. The keywords identified are Japa syndrome, second slavery, post-COVID-19 era, and the Nigerian developments. The introduction. When we look at the history of human survival, adjustment, sustainability, adaptability, we already see that they are integral parts of human existence. And people move for a number of reasons. Even in the olden days, people move in search of water, land, favorable climate, shelter, spread of diseases, epidemic, war, trade, commerce, and a host of reasons. But the Nigerian people started this experience of mass movement right from the Sahara, the history of the Saharan desiccation. That is about 10,000 years ago. Then after that, the major movements also occurred during the slave trade era. We have movements also during the period of trans-Saharan trade, but the major movements occurred during the slave trade era, but then it was forceful migration. People were forced to move, and there were experiences of dehumanization, degradation of human status, and all that. But after the abolition of slavery, after the experience of colonization, people had been moving out of Nigeria as freeborn, as free citizens. They have been going to different countries in search of greener pasture, in search of educational pursuits and all other regions. But there was a change with the experience of COVID-19, just like I said. There was a change, and the expectation of the researcher is that the lessons learned during the pandemic lockdown will encourage Nigerians to look inward further, to try to solve our problem further. But surprisingly, the number continued to be on the increase. So the research questions are, how well have Nigerian youth learned from COVID-19 restrictions? What effect did the pandemic have on youth migration, and what are reasons for increase in migration in the number of people migrating in the post-COVID-19 era? Then how do we reconcile Japa syndrome and the notion of second slavery? Then which way out of this syndrome? The statement is a problem. As explained, the unexpected trend that actually informed the writing of this paper is the fact that post-COVID-19 era witnessed more mass movements of Nigerian youth from the country than before. The objectives of the study are appraisal of COVID-19 pandemic and effects on migration, adaptation during the lockdown, examining the difference between the rate of migration of the Nigerian youth before and after, then the effects of Japa syndrome on social, political, economic, and development of Nigeria, economic development of Nigeria. Then investigation of the causes of Japa in post-COVID era. I related Japa syndrome to the notion of second slavery, then suggesting the ways to curb the syndrome. Methodology. The researcher makes use of both primary and secondary data to study the degree of youth movement from Nigeria before and after the occurrence of pandemic. And I also made use of both quantitative and qualitative method of research to look into the effects of Nigerian social, political, and economic development. Clarification of concepts. Japa syndrome, that was the first thing. It has been defined by different writers. But Japa, according to the Mobility, Technology, and Well-being Laboratory, meant to flee or to run away from Nigeria for good. The Nigerian youth adopted Japa to show the urgency of departure, that you just have to go quickly. And it has since then been adopted as an urban language, whereby we have Japa, Japait, Japain, you know. Yes, so there has been a lot of coinage surrounding Japa. It's been accepted as part of the Nigerian vocabulary, and it has come to stay. Migration. Migration is the basic fact of life. In fact, out of 30, one is a migrant. And it is a procedure that have its outcome as global, social, and economic transformation. At least there's going to be transformation in all aspects of life, and especially the demographic pattern of the people occupying the global space. The Nigerian development and the Nigerian youth. Over 1.2 million Nigerian youth are already growing in the digital era. Average Nigerian youth lost confidence in the ability of the managers of the Nigerian affair to oversee the economy, the political activities, and all that. So this uncontrolled government borrowing, the prompts of printing new currencies, problem of insecurity, unemployment, all this led to the reasons why Nigerian youth lost confidence in the Nigerian administrators. Post-COVID pandemic and impacts on Nigerian economy. Here, Nigeria as a country is identified not as a rich nation, because for one to be qualified as a rich nation, one must be able to have the evidence of GNI per capita threshold of at least 3.896 to qualify to be among the rich nations. Nigeria has 1.968, which qualifies her as a low-income country. So not because you have crude oil, you have mineral resources and all that within your geographical landscape does not make you rich. There's more to it. If you have, for instance, just the way we experience in Nigeria, with lack of political will, sincerity of purpose, majority of the citizens in Nigeria survive on less than $2 per day. All these are direct pointer to the fact that Nigeria is not a rich country. Then digital transformation is part of the experience of the post-COVID pandemic. There was digital transformation. In fact, after the experience of this world pandemic, every organization saw the need to go digital for digital transformation and acquisition of technological infrastructures. Then the last concept is that of the concept of second slavery. Second slavery as a concept came together with the issue of industrialization. That was between 1750 and 1850. That was the time when, after the abolition of slavery, the outbreak of the Industrial Revolution, some countries, especially in America, Cuba, and Brazil, they believe that their economy has not grown beyond slave economy. And they also believe that in order to attend to the socioeconomic realities, the global socioeconomic realities, there's a need for them to still involve in the slave economy. So at a time, it was down on them to have a rethink of an old idea that they had all opposed. And that was why they now took to second slavery. So I'm now trying to relate this issue with the issue of psychological problem, that the idea of of the youth leaving their country to another country, which is very, very important. This is part of what actually bequeaths upon the Blacks, the social stigma that lingered on even up till today. But the fact that Nigerian youth were unable to have they were unable to have good have good livelihood while they were in their country. They tried to close their eyes to this issue of second slavery. And so on those two slides, I have the way Nigerians were scrambling to get out of this country, the way they struggled at the airport, even with their kids. Nobody is interested in Nigeria because of failure of the managers of Nigeria. I presented the data on percentage of employment in Nigeria, unemployment in Nigeria, vis-a-vis the percentage of youth unemployment. The percentage of youth unemployment in the percentage of unemployment in Nigeria. And in 2022, we could see we have 53.40. That's a wide gap between what was experienced in 2020, 21. Now, what is the way out of Japa syndrome? reforms and policy approach. Nigerian government should be interested in creating effective database that will enhance planning towards human capital development, social, economic, and infrastructural development. Then purposeful and responsive government that will provide for the people's needs in the areas of creation of employment, youth development, youth engagement through sustainable intervention. I mean sustainable rather than project-based intervention that are short-term. For instance, Nigerian government, is fond of saying there is a program, they will be sending 30,000 to you for like 2 years. After that, they'll just, stop that. That is short-term. Currently, Nigeria needs long-term sustainable intervention. For instance, the prescription of the United Nations of the payment of Social Security allowance. This is the high time that Nigerian government reconsider this. For instance, if Social Security allowance is paid, there will be no trillions of naira for the political cohorts to embezzle or to, there will be such money will not be available when the government is thinking of how it's going to meet its responsibility of paying the Social Security allowance. Okay, involvement of the representatives of all segments of the society in political administration, so as to cater for all. The Nigerians should consider building technological capabilities that is basic to productive economy. Nigerian economy has not been productive even in the 21st century. There's a need for this. Then my conclusion, Japa, a syndrome that exposed the failure of the managers of Nigerian affairs, was accentuated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Rather than learning from the adaptability lessons we had during the pandemic, the Nigerian youth preferred to migrate, and they were in a haste to do so even. This had a far-reaching effect on the economy, the political affair, and the image of the country on the one hand, and on the psychology of the migrants on the other hand. Hence, the concept of second slavery and rethinking of voluntary migration as against the lingering narratives of discrimination that characterize the slave trade and subsequent experiences have been overlooked. However, the prospects of Japa can be realized. At the same time, just like we see Japa as a problem in Nigeria, we can still have record a number of prospects if the youth have the mind of coming back home to contribute to the eventual transformation of the society, because we will eventually experience transformation. However, the significance of good governance and effective management of the country's resources for sustainability must be assured.
Thank you. Thank you. That is I can say that this your presentation actually is the only one that followed the sequence of a research paper. Thank you for that. We are looking forward to further interaction on this. Matthias, are you still there?
Yes, but
Yes.
let me give Odnaka opportunity to speak before I come in.
Okay. Yes, can you remove?
Thank you everyone for those wonderful presentations. I've been smiling, and some has also been emotional, and that is to speak to the urgency of this issue that are being discussed collectively in this conference. Uh, Japa. I enjoyed all the conversations and all the intellectual questions that are being raised. They are all imperative in our current dispensation as Nigerians, whether Nigerians abroad or Nigerians at home, or Nigerians halfway, or Nigerians who are thinking of jackpying. Even LSA is an organization that is imported from abroad. So Japa is everywhere around us, and we can't just keep quiet. So, the first presenter, I enjoyed your presentation. I think it is one of the perspective that that I hadn't considered when when issues of Japa is raised, how music or the lyrics of popular Afrobeat music can influence Japa in a broad sense. I was just thinking if there is a sort of timeline or historicity in your analogy. For instance, I know that the current Afrobeat wave is not the first time that Nigerian music began to travel abroad, and the effect that had. For instance, I'll just give you one example, like Fela Kuti. Uh, he studied music. So I and then in London before coming back. So I want to see this the transnational build up to your analysis. I think that was the only thing that was missing, because you can't talk about Afrobeat today without mentioning Fela Kuti. I think he's ultimately regarded as a father. So how did his influence in London impact the Afrobeat wave? And you're a musician. I wanted to look at how the music itself, the instruments, the organization, the composition, how has it transitioned? And how is it now accepted as a global product that is consumed widely? Because you can make the argument that Africans in diasporas are the major consumers of this music, but that's not true. If you go to some countries where they don't have many black population, you find out that some of these contemporary Afrobeat musicians are filling up stadiums. Those are not African. So how did the impact of jazz, the mixture of this impact the music? And then coming to what you were saying, because if you had interrogated it that way, it will give you a broader perspective and idea on like uh, what Fela Kuti also sang about in his song in 1980s, right? In 1990, early 1990s. And the complication of this, and today we're exporting Afrobeat. I think that would have been my comment, the timeline, and maybe if there is a theory to actually look at this. And what is your ultimate take? I didn't get your ultimate take. Is it a good thing for us? Is it a bad thing? Because most of the time we always approach this issue as if it is all bad. But if you look at the remittances um, of these Afrobeat musicians into the Nigerian economy, you will also see a positive trajectory. If you look at the taxes that they pay wherever they go to perform, you also see their contribution in that light. And if you look at, apart from some of their wayward lifestyle, which many people may not like, but if you look at the way they inspire younger generations to be good at what they do, there is also another angle that it could take. So what does Japa really mean? Do we just leave, do we just center the discussion on fleeing forever and never returning back? Or do we look at some other aspects of Japa that doesn't pa in the process? Can you look at some process of jar that doesn't pa in the process? That will be my contribution to that. Onyebuchi is not here. Mark, I loved your presentation, Doc. Mark, I think your presentation actually is looking at a critical aspect, the eco-social security of Japa, which I don't think that a lot of people have really looked into. I was just thinking if you could ground this concept. I wanted to understand the grounding of the concept that will lead to the analysis. For instance, the broader discourse on environmentalism and security, not just in Nigeria but around the world. Um, does does in this phenomenon that you described in Nigeria, if it happens in other country, does it inspire Japa or emigration? And how do we contextualize this as an epistemological discourse that can be used to further apply in the Nigerian example or in Nigerian context? I think that will be it from that angle. Onyebuchi is not here, but I I enjoyed some of the emotional connection and the disappointment, that comes with Japa and him embodying Japa himself with Doc as well, Dr. Mark as well. Those that have left and they are back and then they are sharing their experience. I think they are good primary sources to consult in your research, especially those ones in this panel that have been arguing that we should come back after we have obtained our degrees. So you can consult Dr. Mark for interview him and Dr. Onyebuchi. And yes, so Dr. Onyebuchi, I was just interested in knowing, because most of the issues seemed very contemporary. Yeah, if you're in the contemporary mode, you won't be happy, especially think too much about Nigeria. We discuss it here. Too much about Nigeria, you may not be happy, but that is also contentious. However, my comment to him would have been, what about, because this is not the only wave of migration that we're seeing. It's just that at this time it is more digitized. What do I mean? You see the pictures, you see the reports, and all that, and those things that you see, those visuals, those news that feed into you, actually creates this scenario that maybe this is the first time, since after slavery, but that's not true. After the introduction of structural adjustment program in the 1980s and early 1990s, that was the second wave of migration. A lot of people moved from Nigeria. A lot of people moved from Nigeria. So this is not the first time. So if we track infrastructural development from that time to this time, and with what is happening in post COVID-19 period as Adejoke advanced, how do we begin to argue for development in the face of Japa? Is it all negative in a way, or is it positive? Because I know that those that migrated in 1980s, some of them, their remittances have been used in developing some towns and villages in Nigeria, right? Some of them have been able to better the lives of their families. So how do we not look at Japa from one trajectory? That would have been my comment to him. Then Adejoke, thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. I was just marveled by your data and how you are able to divide those migration trends, or if it's on Twitter, we say migration thread, in Nigeria today. I was just immersed in your presentation, and it began to dawn on me that maybe if we compare the data that you have with pre-COVID-19, maybe there may not be, I don't know, but I wanted to see that maybe there may not be more that we see. Maybe what we are seeing is just a gradual trend in migration as government continues to deteriorate, right? Because from the 2000s, there has been increase in migration. There has been increase. So was there like a total break in post-COVID-19 period? I need to get that clear part. Was there a total break? I didn't get it. Yes. So that would be my question. Was there a total break post-COVID-19 era from the data available to you? So you can respond later from data available to you. I was also wondering if you could compare your data even going more back. I'm sorry, I speak more like a historian than an anthropologist or sociologist. But if you can get more data from the 1980s, maybe a decade division, a decade yeah, 1980s to 1990s to 2000 to, and then see if this trend actually intensified so much post the COVID-19 era. And then coming to your conceptual framework, to the conceptualization of your work, which is Japa, the slavery syndrome, right? Rethinking the slave syndrome. I wanted to see more of that. How does the post COVID-19 Japa invoke post? Because I thought that was really interesting. Because I expected you to talk about some of these desperate migration, whereby we saw, I think, beginning of this year or late last year, some group of people who hid themselves on the ship, and then to Spain or wherever, such desperation, and then even you mentioned transatlantic, trans-Saharan is not a thing of the old. People still cross trans-Saharan to Libya, right? En route to Spain. So trans-Saharan is not an old route. It's still a very viable route that many people risk their lives today to take. So how do we, if before, like even those that go on ship, if during the transatlantic slave trade, that these routes like the trans-Saharan route or the Atlantic route was seen as highways of slave transportation, how does that evoke this feeling or this syndrome that you discuss in this contemporary era, where we are seeing the same routes, especially those in desperation, employing the same routes to Japa? I don't know if you're getting where I'm going.
Yeah.
Okay, so that will be my contribution and my take. You all are free to respond to this. I enjoyed the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Odinaka. Thank you so much. I won't take much of our time because Odinaka has really elaborated almost all of the papers and the comment I also had in my jotting. But also, Adejoke, if I can, am I right? Okay, yeah. I'm particularly curious about the image you showed us. You made an assertion that those people at the airport are Nigerians. I was curious to know if you took one-on-one information about them, to know if actually they were Nigerians one after the other, to know if all of them came from Nigeria, because I was shocked when you mentioned that these are Nigerians living leaving the country, and you are affirmative to tell us that these are Nigerians. So I'm curious to know if you did an ethnographic study of them to carry out their identity and their home country to actually tell us that these are Nigerians, and where you took the picture is also a matter of context. And in your paper, I'm curious to also have it linked with Qatar and Indonesia in the global trend of Japa. Also, why are these countries? Because I'm University of Pennsylvania, and I will tell you that none of them wants to stay behind in the United States. All of them, just as Professor Mark pointed out, all of them want to go. And I'm telling you that during our convocation ceremony last month, immediately after the convocation, most people from Asian countries and other, they're already on the airport saying goodbye to the United States, including my close neighbor where I'm living. So I want your paper to create this synergy in a global context, using particularly Indonesia and Qatar. As you are aware of what happened during the World Cup, this thing, how people were amazed on Qatar's advancement in this content dispensation. So how do you connect people in Japan, China? Why are they curious to go back, and why is Nigeria staying behind? And Samson, just on a quick note, I'm also particularly interested in all those writings on the Moluo boss and all that, because there are some reinterpretation on those writings. Sometimes even without echoing the musical concepts, people are also curious to understand those things in keke, Moluo bus driving and all that. And I will send you a paper. I will send you a paper on that, on artistic, all these vehicles in Lagos and urban areas in Nigeria, how they also influenced Japa movement, even without hearing the music. I'm traveling to London. I'm at London, and people are reading it, and also echoing it in their mind that they are also. So I will send that paper on artistic dispensation on all these bosses we are doing. Lastly, Professor Mark, I'm very happy you were here in the United States, and also I'm happy when you link that you traveled back to Nigeria because of your religious call.
Commitments.
Religious commitment, and that's a very powerful commitment you
I'm
have
actually
there.
a Catholic priest, so you don't have to come back to my diocese of Warri.
Okay. So just as my coach here mentioned about the environmental strength and all that, in the last paper, in the last section we had, people tried to talk about Japa and ancestral home, and you also brought it up in this particular session. And particularly me, I'm not really convinced that Japa affects ancestral, affects ancestral home. I'm a Nigerian. If someone walks up to me, which I've also taken cognizance even in the United States, if someone walks up to an African and asks, "Where are you from?" I'm from Nigeria, and they maintain their custom, their norms, and all that. And most of the parents living around will also tell their children, "If I die, make sure you bury me. Make sure you take me back to Nigeria." So this Japa, there is still this identity. People should define what they mean by identity in connecting Japa, whether actually people are living and forgetting their identity. So it's an open argument, not only you, but the audience. Let also establish the definition of identity in terms of people Japaing. Let's know what identity is all about, and the ancestral home, if actually people are not caged in the ancestral home when they are here in diaspora. And I go over to Dr. Mrs. Obiani to chair the physical audience.
Thank you, Odinaka and Matthias. I think the floor is now open for further questions and interactions. So can we see how many we are? Number one, if I'm giving number, Dr. G. Number one, number two, like 3, number 4, and then number 5. Please, 30 minutes. We have only 30 minutes. So we have up to 30 minutes. Please, 2 minutes. Make your interventions concise. Let's ask the question. Let's ask all the question. We have this. Number 1. And the intervention, please. Number 1. 2 minutes for your question or.
All right, thank you very much. I want to appreciate all those that have presented paper in this panel. And my intervention will be going to Dr. Sorry, I may not pronounce your name, but because that is my area of studies, migration, diaspora migration, and all that. So from the topic that you presented, and you are trying to talk about migration, you have not been able to distinguish between a forced migration and a voluntary migration. Now, when a migration is voluntary, can you now say that it is slavery? Is a point that can be contested, because these people are voluntarily going. And even they will even tell you that, like in one of the classes that I taught, when we were talking about voluntary migration, where the students were like, even if slavery will come back again, that they will even come with their own chains. So that they will not tell them stories that the chains has finished, so they can't go. So this guy is a voluntary trainer. I don't think that using slavery will sit down very well in that. Then again, I would want to also ask, like, okay, I think Odinaka made mention of that. The post-COVID era that you are now making it look as if it's the post-COVID that is now amplifying this voluntary migration. The migration has started way before, as in the moment people began to see that the Nigerian economic turn is going to the downturn, and expect, okay, you can, for instance, between 2016, when we witnessed a situation whereby the Nigerian monetary policy saw the Nigerian naira jumping against the dollar, before then, people were still comfortable. Okay, 100 plus against the dollar was still manageable. But when the thing now got to 500, 400, 600, now people say, then there is no point, let me just go. You understand? And also, I am also contesting the slavery aspect that you are talking, because most of the people that you see that are moving are very comfortable. If you can, most of them, I said most, if you cannot afford, let's say 10 million naira, you cannot go. If you cannot afford 10 million, you can't move. So it's not most of them are comfortable. So I want you to rethink that slavery that you are using for your paper. Thank you very much.
I think my first intervention will directly a bit align with what it said. I find it difficult to believe that it is post-COVID that accentuates the movement. Movement has been part and parcel of us for a very long time. One problem about Nigeria is we make noise too much. And that's one of the problems we have, the noise everywhere. And that's why when they said Nigeria are moving, we are not looking at other people moving. If you look at the data of the Indians that are moving, they are more than Nigerians. If you look at the data of the Chinese that are moving, they are more than Nigeria. Even coming down to Nigeria, and the same thing with the Pakistani, all of them like that. But because we make a lot of noise, that's why it's more or less like, okay. Now, the economy is a different thing. Even if the economy is okay, people will still continue moving. We have a lot of Americans coming to Nigeria on a daily basis. We had a conference. Some of them were even saying that they don't like coming to Nigeria. For what? Because Nigeria used to deny them visa. That was the first time I was so surprised. Nigerians are denying American visa to come to Nigeria. And they say it's not like that in Ghana. It's not like that in Cote d'Ivoire, but in Nigeria. So that's to tell you that other people come. But one of the problems I think we have is our own mentality of going there and start doing menial job. And that's the problem some people have. So because we have a lot, and that is not only, we are only stigmatizing that area. We have a lot of qualified people. Go to Canada, a lot of skilled people are there. Technology, virtually everything, that are Nigerians. But we only look at those ones doing the menial job. And that is what we use to define ourselves. And because other people come in, maybe peradventure, because of the nature of who they are not coming here to come and be sweeping the floor or to come and be washing, whatever. So that's why we are not stigmatizing them. So the way Nigerians are moving, other people too are moving. So, and then one good thing about Nigeria is whenever we travel, we don't lose our identity. That's another thing. We don't lose it. The Owambe here is virtually everywhere. There are some places in New York that if you see their Owambe, you'll be like, are you still in Nigeria? Either Yoruba, either Igbo, or whatever. So they still do the way they do here. And that's why the culture of spraying money is still virtually everywhere in Europe, whereby in Nigeria. In fact, recently, we have imported our own Owambe style system of dancing, virtually everything. So even the Oyibo, where they are copying us. So I want us to look at both sides, not only the negative side that makes us to look like more or less like Japa is something that is, no, it has been like that. And people are going to continue moving. Even the people that came here for slavery, they Japa from their own country and come here before they discover that they can, okay. So if they did not leave their country, they won't know. So they left their country and come back here and come down here. So please, let us take a look at that particular place. Thank you.
Number 3.
I was in London. The point was you are patient. I was pregnant then. I went to university in London hospital. And the young Asian I saw there was pregnant. How many children? The first one pregnant. I was like, I don't know. And she's going on. So they are there, not the way but the effect that they made too much. And then our father went to the BBC to tell them. And I know I
Thank you. I want to appreciate the presenters for a wonderful presentation. I'm Abba Danladi. Listening to the presentations and comments has been wonderful. I want to start by saying that what we are witnessing is not unique or peculiar to Nigeria. It's been ongoing. From 1958 through 1960 to 70, over 60 to 70,000 Nigerians were in fire in what you call Equatorial Guinea. You know, Fernanda Poe, you know, working in the plantation. I mean, they didn't call that Japa, but that was a massive migration induced by labor. And I want to say that the story you are telling seems to be that of a single story. You are looking at one. You've forgotten that the statistics we have is showing that diaspora remittances in 2022, 2021 was more than foreign direct investments. So people move, and globally there's about 10.8 million Chinese are all over the world. people are not complaining. So migration is actually something that brings economic development and not necessarily being an evil to national growth and development. Because as people travel, they return, they remit. And in some countries, as we speak, I know some countries that mobilize and encourage and support their citizens to move abroad, to work and make money and return in Africa. So you need to take this, and somebody was recently saying, there's a book by Stephen Smith, where he did say that what Africans are doing now is a return leg of the march of what the Europeans did during the scramble of Africa. And so in his book, he talked about, the European scramble for Africa, a book published about 2 years ago, trying to study and ask questions about what Africans are doing, that what we are doing now, even, and the associated challenges with the crossing of Lampedusa and the migrant crisis. He's saying it's not strange that the Europeans during the scramble moved in their drones to Africa and made money. So Africans are also going to Europe because the crisis within Africa is so huge, and so they are trying to, to play a return leg. So that is it. And then to the person who spoke emotionally about nation building, and I will agree with him. The crisis of nation building, the state has failed. The post-colonial states, Ake and some other political scientists have talked about the failure of the post-colonial states to engage in social provisioning, to take care of this excessive poverty in the land, and few are excessively rich. How do we bridge this gap? That's something that worries me. How do we bridge the gulf that exists between those that are stupendously rich and those that are excessively poor? Should we expect a revolution from below or a revolution from above? Or we resent to fate? And that is how God wants it. For unto you that have, more shall be given. For you that have not, the little you have shall be taken. So just a food for thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the organizers, participants, panelists. Just a quick one. I may be diverting a little just for fun or something. I have understood what you mean by Japa because I've been longing to hear that. Now, maybe moving from Nigeria to other countries. But I want to also ask, we live in our village because of one witch in the village, and we refuse to go home. Remain in the city, the urban settlement. Is that not Japa as well? On the lighter note. Then to the priest, I know that you're a priest when you were discussing later. That's the priest Mark. I wanted to say that the congregation you are running back to and meet, are you sure that's not Japa to abroad?
No, I'm not.
And I also want to ask, does it mean that being having Japa over there, does it mean you're going to lose, at least somebody make a comment towards that, does it mean you're going to lose your religion, inclination, kind of, are you going to lose your mind, lose your identity as a Christian or a Muslim if you Japa? So, because some of us maybe are trying, some of us want to Japa. Thank you. That last one.
Okay. Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Chukwuebuka Uvu from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. So I'm really enjoying this session, and I have to admit that I was surprised when Mr. Matia said that they are proud to say that they are Nigerians over there, because I kept wondering what is happening in Nigeria, fraud and rituals, because there was this South African that was having a conversation with, and then the South African was like, she cannot come to Nigeria because of the films she had watched about Nigeria, because of the rituals, the witchcraft and all of that. So I want to ask, because I like I said, I was surprised when Mr. Matian said that they are proud because this question of identity. So I want to ask, how do this this narrative, how do we control the narrative, the stigma, because people don't trust Nigerians. So when you mention that you are Nigerian, they have this negative mindset towards you. So this is just my question. So how proud are you to say you are in Nigeria over there?
All right. Thank you very much. I'm very happy seeing my very good friend Matthias Isiani over there. Matthias, hey. And surprisingly, my colleague, who was almost crying, James Sile, who are in the same faculty in UNIZIC. My name is Dr. Chinedu Mbalisi. I really enjoyed this session. I know very well that this is an emerging thing. It has been there. But the dimension it's taking is what is creating these contestations now, the way it is, as it were. You see, I once read opinions about the transatlantic slave trade, where the late sage, Professor Adele Ebretuka-Afibo, had argued that what has happened then was just the movement of labor from where it was so maximum to where it was required. And so movement of labor is a constant, depending on the economic situations. So sometimes the conditions will direct or redirect movement of labor. So from what my friend Dr. Said, it's not out of place to see Nigerians moving out of what they have to do. But when we try to look at it in another dimension on issues of nation building, if we all begin to migrate out of the nation, irrespective of what is going to come in as remittances, if all of us decide to migrate out of Nigeria because the situation is bad, I ask for everybody, who would fix the country? All right? Yes. Again, let us look at it also in this dimension again. You see, the Western world had always tried to keep Africa on their knees by providing the largesse of comfort, so that we always come to seek comfort in their country. I remember one of the things I read about the American overseas policies, that want to build a country where countries of the world would gladly want to come and do business in America, and that where at the time the dollar will become the global currency, upon which countries that don't have access to the dollar would want to freeze. And they started building those empires until today. When the dollar shakes, every currency in the world will begin to shiver. It's just what they planned from the days, and they are doing it. Now, what I'm trying to put forward is, do we not look at it as a way of the West still trying to make sure that the underdeveloped world remain underdeveloped, so that they will perpetuate dependency? Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here to witness this session. My name is Temitayo Migule, and I'm from Obafemi Awolowo University, Ife. I've been listening to the conversation concerning Japa, but the thing is that there's an important question to ask, and that important question to ask is that, do you strongly feel that the Japa syndrome, the current ongoing Japa syndrome in Nigeria, has any threat to either our economy, any genuine threat to either our economy, our infrastructural development, our whatever you want to think? Do you really think that it will or it does have any threat? My answer to that is that I strongly feel that it doesn't have so much impact on any sector of the economy. Where the impact is going to be felt are the receiving countries. All of our worries should go to the receiving countries. Let me tell you something. On my way down to Lagos, I arrived Lagos around 11 on Monday night. I wasn't expecting to meet any traffic jam. Ask me why. Because the popular notion being shared is that everybody, almost everyone in Nigeria has almost left. They are gone. In my department, the student population still remains the same. On the road, the population remains the same. In the offices, they go, they employ me. So the thing is that the population of Nigeria, without us jackpotting, there will be serious problem if they have nowhere to go. So my concern is not that Nigerians are moving. I feel that the countries of the West should be more concerned than us because their infrastructural facilities are being challenged, their health are being challenged, their everything. So the thing is that we sometimes overblow situations out of their usual context and all of that. And that is a peculiar characteristics of Nigeria. We are used to it. So when people talk about Japa, I just look at them. The thing is that the population of Nigerians, Japa shouldn't worry Nigerians, should worry the country of the West that are the receiving end, because very soon Nigerian population may outgrow their own indigent population over there and they'll be challenged.
Thank you to the presenters. And at a point, I slept off during the presentation, but from my own concept of migration is that every migration is as a result of the quest for power. Now, when we talk about Japa, there's so much narrative about Japa, but this whole thing about Japa did not actually start today. Because I worked on irregular migration. In fact, there was a time that was called in the history of Nigeria the age of the era of irregular migration, and that was between 2013 and 2016, where we had a mass movement of irregular migrants. Generally, from the 1980s down to now, is called the age of global migration. So this global migration is not peculiar to Nigerians. And one of the factors that leading to this mass movement is advancement in telecommunication and the internet. So when we are talking about migration and we are putting it as the peak being 2020 after COVID, I think this is really wrong. So please try and marry all these other issues together.
Please, so that we have to just for 1 minute. People are leaving. 1 minute. I'll start from the last speaker. I'll start from the last speaker. The question asked by the last speaker. Hello. The question asked by the last speaker is very close to the question asked by one of those people online about why COVID-19 time. I came across the particular data which gives the migration rates, and compare the migration rate with the growth rate in Nigeria. For 2019, the pandemic, 2020 rather, that was the real pandemic time in Nigeria. It was like -1 point for the migration rate. But later, it's doubled and it started 3 point something after. That is one. Then also, there was this question about the classification of migration. The person that asked it had gone. We have different kinds of migration. We have voluntary migration, involuntary migration, legal and illegal. Because even if it is voluntary, it may be legal and it may be illegal, according to International Organization of Migration. Because when we have people struggling to go through any route, through the desert, you know, whichever way, that it becomes illegal, though it is voluntary. So there are so many classifications. Then also, concerning global migration, I have information about global migration, but you know, when you make a PowerPoint presentation, you may not put all information there. Here, the global migration is estimated to be 281 million, according to international migrants in the world, specifically in 2020. And that is like 3.6% of the total global population. North America, 58.7 million, Europe, 86.7 million, and Asia. It's only in Nigeria that we have small percentage. So I very much agree that the rate at which Africans migrate is not up to the rate at which all others migrate. But it now becomes a worrisome thing.
You are taking their time.
Oh, sorry.
Dr. Sampson, please, 1 minute to respond to.
Okay, thank you. And all other things noted.
Doctor, unmute yourself. Sampson.
Samson, unmute yourself, Samson, unmute and talk. Just 1 minute. They are leaving by 5:30.
Oh, thank you. I think it was Naka that mentioned. My position on my paper is that Japa syndrome is not a bad thing for Nigerian music industry. Yeah, we can't say it is a bad thing. And also, I like you mentioned about theory. I'm actually working on the paper and looking at theory. And I also appreciate Matthias for, the promise he made about sending a paper on, something about artistic works on vehicles and how they come into my discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Professor Mark.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just thank you. I've noted all the points you have highlighted about my paper on the broader issues of environmentalism from a global perspective. Let me just respond to the issue of coming back because of my religious commitment. There are thousands of Nigerian priests actually who are in Europe, in America, and the rest. Many of them, of course, with the permission of their bishop. And we normally speak that Europe initially came to evangelize us. But now there are many, of course, religious priests, pastors, and men who have gone back to Europe and America to evangelize them. So essentially, there are priests, if they live where they are working, maybe even abroad, some of the churches may close down, the situation over there. So the point is that it is acceptable, Japa, it's not wrong, it's acceptable even for religious reasons to be abroad and make your own contribution. But if there must be Japa, it should be balanced and purposeful. And no matter where you go to, just as many of you have pointed that we should always remember our ancestral homeland and make our contribution. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those that are presented online. Thank you, Dr. Matthias. Sometimes I know the time is not usually content for both of you, but I appreciate your efforts to see the success of this panel. I thank all the people that participated, those that made their contribution. I really appreciate your time. Please stay up for that test coming up tomorrow. And let's hear more about this Japa issue. Thank you.
Thank you.